It has been a long and bitter campaign, but finally it is coming to an end. And tomorrow, Thursday, the 23rd of June 2016, you have the power. Not the talking heads in the studios, not the big politicians, not the banks and the finance houses and the big multinational corporations who've paid so much to persuade you to remain in the European Union. You have the power to change your own life and to change the course of history. You'll have noticed by now that almost nobody campaigning for Remain has tried to persuade you that things are good in the European Union, that your life is going to be better if we remain in the European Union. Instead, they have sought to instill fear amongst you and a lack of confidence in our own abilities. They have promised you the four horsemen of the apocalypse: war, famine, pestilence and disease, disaster, a bomb under the economy. They have tried everything to terrify you about the dangers of leaving the European Union, and nothing to inspire you about how things will get better. I've just been watching a speech by the Right Honourable Peter Shore, a man I was proud to sit next to in Parliament over several years, which he gave at the Oxford Union on the eve of the referendum in 1975. And he made this similar point. He said, we've been in the European Union 2.5 years, so they can no longer promise you that things are going to be good if we remain. They can only seek to terrify you about how bad things will be if we leave. The truth is, apocalypse does not lie on the other side of Brexit. Britain will remain a powerful trading and manufacturing nation with a great history and something of a name in the world. Britain, with its population of 65 million people, its hinterland of a commonwealth with hundreds of millions of people, many of them in economies doing far better than ours, Britain will continue to exist and to thrive if we leave the European Union. On the other side, if we stay in the EU, it's more of the same, a fading, failing collection of European economies whose future is increasingly in doubt itself. You see, if there was a referendum tomorrow across the whole of the European Union about whether or not people should join it, I promise you it would be overwhelmingly rejected. So I think that this whole project has been about making you lose confidence in yourselves, lose confidence in your own ability and in your own democracy. They say that UKIP will thrive if we Brexit. In truth, the result that UKIP want most is a narrow defeat for Brexit, because they will be the principal beneficiaries of it. The fact is, the anti-EU cause was always a left-wing cause. Mr. Tony Benn was its great leader. Peter Shore, Michael Foot, the great trade union leaders. They were the ones who led the campaign in 1975 in the last referendum. And if they had, or their counterparts had, led this campaign, well, we would have swept the country. If everybody could hear Peter Shore's speech, we'd sweep the country. If Peter Shore or somebody like him had made a speech like he did at the Wembley Arena on BBC Question Time last night, we would have swept the country, which is the reason why people like Peter Shore were not chosen to appear on the BBC. So I'm asking you to have confidence in yourself. Stop overestimating the Roman Empire that is the EU, and start valuing your own abilities to control your own lives. If we do that, I believe that we will have a great future outside the EU. We'll continue to trade with its member countries, of course, because they will want to continue to trade with us. But we'll be able to conclude trade arrangements, even trade deals, with the countries we turned our backs on in 1973 when we joined the European Union. Some of them, as I say, burgeoning and growing like Topsy in the world. Most of the countries in the world are not in the EU. Most of the G8 are not in the EU. Most of the G20 are not in the EU, and many of them are doing very well, as we will ourselves, I believe. Let's look for a minute at the domestic consequences. If we Brexit tomorrow, David Cameron will be gone by lunchtime on Friday, or at least the process of removing him will have started. People say, well, we'll get Michael Gove or Boris Johnson, and I reply, and they're worse than David Cameron and George Osborne. How? But the truth is the Tory party will begin imploding, exploding actually, falling apart. And a general election will not be long delayed. And in that general election, we'll have a choice between Jeremy Corbyn and his Labour outlook and proposals, his honesty and sincerity, up against who? Boris Johnson? My money would be on Jeremy Corbyn. We could get rid of the Tories starting tomorrow, and we could get a Labour government. In conclusion, leaving the European Union is a necessary but not sufficient condition. Britain is not the Britain we want it to be. British democracy not as democratic as we want it to be. We will still have much to do to build a Britain fit for our children and their children, but we will not even be able to begin to do so if we don't take the chance that's offered to us tomorrow to be free, to be independent, to be sovereign. And that's what I'm asking you to grasp. Grasp back from the unknown, the unnamed, the faceless, unelected, unremovable, powerful, wealthy people who rule us now. Take it back into our own hands, and then we'll be responsible for our own destiny. In the skies above me in 1940, when we stood alone with Hitler at the Channel ports, we stood alone, and if we had not, the course of world history would have been very different, and I'd be speaking to you on this video in German if I was speaking to you at all. Britain is a great country. Its people are a great people. They can stand up for themselves. They can govern themselves, and they will have the chance to do so, God willing, after a Brexit victory in tomorrow's referendum.
The whole thing is an absurdity, and therefore I urge you to reject it. I urge you to say no to this motion, and I urge the whole British country to say no on Thursday in the referendum.